Now, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has outlined a new phase of economic reforms aimed at pushing the country's growth beyond 3%. In his annual State of the Nation address, Ramaphosa emphasized the need for a thriving economy that benefits all, creating a cycle of investment, growth, and job creation. Now, the central bank projects 1.8% growth for this year. Ramaphosa also stressed the importance of revitalizing struggling state-owned enterprises like Eskom and Transnet, and highlighted infrastructure investments as key priorities for the government's economic strategy under the newly formed coalition. So Professor Waldo Krugell, an economist at Northwest University, joins me to talk about this. Thank you so much, Professor Waldo, for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
So President Ramaphosa set a goal to lift South Africa's economy and drive growth above 3%. What are the key reforms that you would look at that can achieve this target?
I think the key reforms are almost the obvious ones. It's providing electricity, improving the efficiency of the railways and the ports. Water provision is also one of the big ones. Local service delivery also adds to economic activity. So once those can get going, hopefully it will also boost general business confidence and get private sector investment in whatever their business is to get going, and in that way drive the economic growth that we're looking at.
Now, would it be a walk in the park for Ramaphosa, looking at global dimensions, domestic headwinds, geopolitics and all that, including the uncertainties that we're seeing in the market of late?
It's not going to be easy. The 3% that was mentioned is absolutely a stretch target. The South African economy hasn't grown at 3% for a while. And like you mentioned, there are always downside risks out there. A lot of things have to go right to achieve 3% growth. And it has to be a virtuous cycle of faster reforms leading to more business confidence, leading to investment, leading to a stronger rand, leading to a drop in long-term interest rates, leading to more sustainable debt. A lot of things need to fall in place in order for the economy to grow that fast. There are even those that question whether the economy can grow that fast, whether our potential growth rate is now declined to closer to 2%, and at the moment that you grow in excess of 2%, you'll start fueling inflation. It's a major challenge that is presenting there.
Well, let me bring this to perspective. We saw the U.S. President Donald Trump threaten trade sanctions in South Africa over certain policies seen as unfavorable. Is that a major problem that might cause a setback for this administration and its economy?
It is a problem in the sense that it affects our markets. We saw earlier this week how both the Rand and the stock exchange reacted to President Trump's threats. And added to that, it's bad for investor confidence. It creates uncertainty about what our trade relations are going to look like in the next 6 months, in the next 4 years. And that makes it difficult to plan. And we're a small, open economy, so we are really dependent on exports. And exports under the bigger AGOA umbrella to the US is an important part of our exports. So in that sense, international uncertainties are going to play a big role in whatever government tries to do with their reforms and the economic stimulus program.
And the fact that South Africa is part of the BRICS and China is its top trading partner for both exports and imports. How easy will it be to carry out sweeping reforms without jeopardizing this relationship with US still biting down?
I think in terms of domestic reforms, we should really get going with that. More momentum is the key. But then maintaining that balance of saying we are non-aligned, that's going to be really difficult. We have really historic ties with countries that are not friendly towards the US, and the US is not friendly towards them. And denying those or pretending that they don't exist will be a very difficult diplomatic task. And I think our diplomats are going to work very hard in the next few years to try and balance what used to be old alliances with the need for trade with the greater West.
All right, Professor Krugell, Part of the reasons the ANC couldn't win enough votes to secure the seat in the past presidential election was the previous economic rollout under this administration. Those were called to question. Now, where did Ramaphosa initially get it wrong? What are the guarantees that these new reforms will make things better?
I think it's key to understand that this reform process is contested. Opening up the economy, specifically the state-owned enterprises, to more private sector competition or participation. Not everybody's in agreement with that. Some of us think it's a good idea, it can increase efficiency, but there are other interests that don't want this. For example, ahead of the SONA, the labor unions called for more public employment. They want more of their members to be employed by government, while on the other side of the coin, the government needs to stabilize its spending and public debt. So that there's always this sort of push and pull of ideas, and I think that has slowed progress, even with the smaller and more sensible reforms. So in that sense, the president didn't say much that was new. These plans are already on the table, but implementation has been slow due to politics.
Now we're seeing a country struggling with its debts. We're seeing a country struggling with employment. We're seeing a country trying to open up the vista for other partnerships, so to speak, to grow the economy. But then, with the South African economy expected to grow at only 1.8%, how realistic is the goal of even surpassing 3% growth in the near future?
I think it's a stretch goal. In that sense, 1.8% is already going to be tough. Looking at high-frequency indicators for January, purchasing managers' indices are not showing much growth. So we really have to get going if we want to get close to 1.8. For 3%, there needs to be significant progress and very fast progress. For example, in getting more private sector operators to supply electricity to the grid, opening up the grid and the network for private investment, getting private sector operators into the Transnet space, into the port space. Those are things that I've talked about, and everybody agrees there's room for some efficiency gains and greater competitiveness, but they're slow to happen. But I think once they start happening and we can show a positive progress, that could crowd in more investment. And once that dynamic gets going, hopefully you get a virtuous circle of confidence and investment, more confidence, more investment. And in the meantime, consumers get some money in their pockets and they spend as well.
But then do you think that fiscal and monetary policies have helped in these regards, talking about stimulating local growth?
I think they have not. Fiscal policy, at least, they set the right aims, but there's, due to what is in effect austerity measures to stabilize the public debt, there's not been a lot of money available for investment by government. Those sums are small. Even the ones mentioned by the president yesterday even are not significant amounts of money compared to the budget or the size of the economy. They really need private capital to come into this. So government spending has not been stimulating economic growth. Slow reforms have been hampering it. And on the monetary policy side, like almost all other countries, we've been fighting inflation, which meant really high real interest rates. So again, the policy has been contractionary, at least for the past 4 years. So in that sense, we're starting from scratch to get to that 3%.
Okay. Now let's look at the struggling state-owned enterprises. I'm talking about Eskom and Transnet. How critical is addressing the challenges faced by these state-owned enterprises to the broader economic recovery of South Africa?
It's critical. All the economic modeling shows that being able to keep the electricity on is a key for economic activity, and a large part of these assumptions of growth in this year is based on having no load shedding. That the moment that there is load shedding, growth is lower. There are also some good estimates out for the cost of the inefficiencies in the railways and at the ports to the economy. So you're talking like R1 billion a day lost due to that trade that could have happened that doesn't happen. So addressing those are key, and I think there are lots of plans ongoing, but progress hasn't been fast. And we saw last week Parliament being really unhappy at Eskom representatives that there are still significant accounting discrepancies and auditing problems, even though they were able to keep the lights on last year.
So does that mean that we're expected to see maybe more government bailouts, or they may just be privatized?
It's a big question. I think analysts are in agreement that Transnet might need a bailout of some kind to stabilize its debt. We've already given such a bailout to Eskom. On the Eskom side, I think the big focus is going to be local governments and their debt to Eskom, to try and see what you can do about that. On the Transnet side, the minister last year refused a bailout, but we'll have to wait and see up to the budget whether he's going to provide some sort of plan or whether he wants to see more clear progress drawing in the private sector.
All right, Professor Waldo Krugell, an economist at Northwest University. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the show. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay.